Alright you guys, this is your next Q&A. Like always, you guys send in a lot of good questions. If I didn't get you on this one, I'll try to get you on the next one. I'm going to start doing these Q&As on a regular basis again. So if you guys got questions, submit them. Put them in any comment section on the channel and I'll find them. Let's get straight to it. So Local from Sanjo wants to know, did SF have a VML Sureño hood? The only Sureño neighborhoods I remember were 11th Street, 16th Street, 18th Street. This hood is split. Some are Norteños and some are Sureños. 19th Street, DPL, Dolores Parque Locos, and then you have a couple more hoods in the Tenderloin. I'm not sure specifically about VML though. So Ray 40 Ray wants to know, Boxer, can you get a hold of one of those 19th Street gangsters and have a discussion? What organization predominantly controls the Tenderloin? We know who runs Salinas Chinatown. I would have no problem having an open discussion with one of those guys from 19th, but I honestly don't know how to get a hold of one myself. I'm not even sure that they're still around, but like I said, if the opportunity presented itself, I definitely have one come on the channel. As far as who runs the Tenderloin, believe it or not, the TL is open real estate. Nobody has ever dominated the Tenderloin throughout the years. There's pockets of Norteños and Sureños out there who have just functioned in different areas. The TL is a crazy area. There's a lot of diversity out there and it's always been open like that. You have Africanos, Asians, Caucasians, Paisas, Samoans, Norteños and Sureños out there, all working in different areas. But nobody's ever taken full control of the TL and established it as their own. You would think that the NF would have taken advantage of the Tenderloin by dropping its flag out there the same way it has in Salinas' Chinatown. But it's never happened. I never even attempted to establish it when I was the regimental commander out there, and I think it's probably because of how diverse it was. I'm not saying it couldn't have been done, but because there were so many different group segments working out there, it would have been an arduous undertaking. So FFC wants to know, my question is about the teachers on the yards or in the hole that taught the bonds and Constitution. Who sanctioned or qualified them to be teachers? Were there guys who studied the bonds and Constitution, know exactly what the founders meant? How does anyone really know what the original founders of these bonds and Constitution meant? That's a good question. But let me see if I can simplify this for you. So the maestros are usually hand selected by the OA, the overall authority, or the RC, the regimental commander. What it basically comes down to is this. All NR Nuestra Raza members are schooled and have obviously went through some type of indoctrination process. Some more intensive and some more rigorous than others. I would seek out those ones who were more seasoned and who were more versed to act as the maestros. You basically have to work with what you got. So to answer your question, it's the RC who qualifies them, and this is based on his own evaluation and observation. Whenever I was looking for a maestro to teach Glesha, I chose the best qualified NR members to put in these positions. Before just delegating these positions, I obviously had some time to listen to these guys and evaluate their level of schooling first. You asked how anyone knew what the original founders really meant and how anyone could be sure that they had the correct interpretation. Because all this schooling is passed down and methodically broken down with the manpower. Written and verbal breakdowns are constantly gone over and shared. And a lot of it is common sense. For the most part, even though different maestros might have different ways of schooling the 14 bonds and the NR plight, it's basically all taught using the same concept. And at the end of the day, that's all that really matters. So Helen Aberles wants to know, I'm from Selma. Do you remember the names of people from there? I can only remember 2 individuals from Selma. I know I've probably met more than these guys over the years, but Bullet and Boxer are the only 2 I can remember. So Máquina Listo wants to know, how many gold stars and smiley faces did you hand out during your career? I know that this was said in good humor, but I'm going to answer this question anyway. As a maestro, I always gave these guys their credit and their due diligence whenever I would go over their assignments. The same way I would be quick to point out their errors and mistakes whenever they were wrong, I was just as quick to give them their props and their kudos whenever they were right on track and did a good job. It's all part of the process, and it's all part of instilling the kind of confidence in them that motivates them to keep striving harder. So Will Atwood wants to know, in almost every incident you hear life-saving measures performed on victims. What exactly are these life-saving measures, and do they actually try to save their lives? Many staff won't go in claiming officer safety. In your experience, how much do they actually do to try to save victims? Do they allow these killings to take place so as to lock down the prison? That's a good question. You're one of the only ones who caught and commented on that. That seems to be a standard response that their PR spokesman always feeds the media. The truth about it is that they seldomly do anything to help dying inmates. I mean, the medical personnel will obviously do what they can to help someone with grave injuries, and they act like they're concerned. But I guarantee you that they don't render the kind of aid or medical assistance that they would if it was their family member laying there bleeding out. They lag, there's no urgency, and they really don't care. They also tend to get caught up playing some of the games that some of the corrupt COs inflict on the inmates. You can have an inmate get the shit beat out of them in their presence, and the nurses will play along with them by giving the inmate a minimal amount of care, telling them that they'll be okay, while the whole time they're laughing with the COs. From experience, I can tell you this about the medical staff. They are some of the most callous and inconsiderate people that work in the jails and prisons. That's just the way they are. I think it comes from dealing with crybabies and guys that whine day in and day out. There's some guys that are just needy. They're constantly asking the nurses and medical staff for something. For some, it's just a game they play. But this has an effect on how the nurses treat everyone. They treat everyone like crybabies and whiners. I stayed away from going to medical or asking the nurses in there for anything for this exact reason. Because I didn't want to deal with their attitude or have one just tell me, take 2 Tylenol and rest my neck. To an extent, I can understand how some of these medical people develop these brash attitudes, but at the same time, being that they're professionals and are working in that type of environment, I still wouldn't expect them to treat some of the inmates the way that they do. Bottom line, just trust me. If your loved one was having a serious medical condition or was experiencing some type of serious medical emergency, a state prison infirmary with state medical technicians is the last place you would want them to be. So Christian Maciel wants to know, would you mind commenting or doing an episode on the most vicious, brutal thing you saw while in prison? There's a few brutal situations that I can think of, such as seeing an inmate do a swan dive off the 5th tier in San Quentin's Carson section. He was obviously trying to kill himself, and I'm sure he intended on landing head first on the bottom tier. However, he bounced off an air conditioner that was mounted to the gunrail. This broke his fall and he survived, but the damage was still pretty brutal, and it's something I'll never forget. I also seen a J-Cat get his head blown off on one of the exercise yards in San Quentin. He was fighting with another J-Cat when it happened, and both of them had refused to stop fighting or get down on the ground, which resulted in him getting shot. It wasn't so much that I seen him get his head blown off that made it something that I've never forgot. I had seen this happen before on the streets, so that's not what it was. It was how pieces of his head and brain matter had sprayed all over the wall that always stuck in my mind. But one of the most brutal things that I remember seeing in prison is when the Crips killed one of their own on the weight pile. While the victim was under 300 to 400 pounds on the bench press, one Crip slammed an 80-pound dumbbell on his head, while 2 others made sure that he dropped the 300 to 400 pounds on his neck. It was pretty brutal. I was probably standing about 10 to 15 feet away, but I was standing close enough where I swear I could hear some of his bones breaking. So NorCal Tim Caldwell wants to know, I was curious if you knew my cousin, Chris from Santa Rosa. He was released from Pelican Bay in 2003 after doing 6 years and released from the SHU. He's got Santa Rosa above his eyebrows and a Welga bird on his chin. I know a lot of homeboys from Santa Rosa, but I can't remember anyone just based on the information you gave me. It would have helped if you would have gave me explicazo. You know how it is. It's rare that people go by their real names in there. So SFC wants to know, is there any way you can do a video on prison cell living? Do you guys really sit down to piss? Was there really a no flatulence rule? The do's and don'ts. How you learned this etiquette. How and why you became such a stickler for perfection in your cell. In your alter ego. Boxer cell rules of living. And why they differed from the standard. When you're talking about it, we can see and hear how dead serious you are about it. I know you were dead serious when you asked me these questions, but you had me dying. I couldn't stop laughing. Sitting to pee? No flatulence? Yeah, homie. I can do something a little more informative in the future, but for now, let me kill some of these myths. Well, at least kill them for myself, because I can't speak for anybody else but myself. Foremost, no, we didn't used to sit to pee. Where did you get that from? Again, I can only speak for myself and those that I live with, but sitting to pee is definitely not something we used to do. I get the question insofar as it is a respect thing, but that's a little extreme. The reason I think you heard something like this is because when you're locked up in a cell with another man, you're locked up together in a small confined area, literally the size of a closet, and everything you do in there is amplified. You can obviously hear and see everything, so out of respect, you try to find ways to minimize or drown out the sound of certain things you do. Using the facilities, meaning the bathroom, is obviously one. I don't want to get too graphic out of respect for the females that are listening, but let me just try to put this in the right context. When you take a piss, most of us will flush the toilet so that it kind of masks out the sound. The toilets in prison sound like fucking vortexes. They're loud and will basically drown out the sound of almost anything, and that's why we'll flush when we're using the bathroom. Nobody wants to hear someone take a 3-minute piss in the cell where it practically sounds like it's right there in your ear. So again, that's what the flushing of the toilet is for. It's a respect thing. The same thing applies when someone's defecating or passing gas. If you're defecating, you drop one, you drown one, and continue flushing as you're going. I've had cellies in the past that would sit on the toilet and flush the toilet while they were passing gas. The whole idea is to use the crazy suction of the toilet to pull all that toxic, decrepit, foul-smelling air down the pipes and straight out of someone's man wallet. On the reals though, I'm telling you guys, the toilets in prison sound like vortexes. They're extremely loud. One of the unwritten rules whenever someone's getting killed or stomped out in prison that everyone honors is to start flushing their toilets. It's done automatically. If they hear someone fighting or getting stomped out, they'll just start flushing to drown out the noise. This is because the toilets drowned everything out. Put it like this. You can flush whole bed sheets, blankets, towels, or even shoes down those toilets. It's one of the best and most effective ways to get rid of contraband too. But the main point in all this is respect. It's all about respecting your cellie and his space. I had to learn how to be flexible, how to be patient, and how to compromise. As we get older, some of us get stuck in our ways. We have a certain way of doing things, but even then, you have to be willing to compromise and you have to keep an open mind insofar as doing things different. If you don't have a solid, open line of communication with your cellie, something that's small and petty can escalate and eventually turn into something serious. I've seen cellies get into it over putting the soap in the wrong spot, spitting in the sink instead of the toilet when brushing their teeth, and things like that. Me personally, when I'm celled up with someone who isn't getting any financial support, someone who doesn't have family or an old lady sending them money, I'll let him know he's welcome to anything in the cell. This is where the food's at. Here's the coffee. You're welcome to whatever it is you want. However, all I ask in return is that you be considerate. If you like to drink coffee all day, that's all good. But you do that when you got your own shit, not when I'm carrying you. That's courtesy. You're not going to have me out before the end of the month because you drank it all. Another thing that can cause problems is going through your cellie's personal possessions when he's not in the cell. Some things are just out of bounds. You don't go in someone's personal pictures, their personal letters, or their legal work. That's disrespectful. I can go on and on about this topic because it involves a lot of issues. But the last thing I'll touch on is keeping up with your personal hygiene and keeping your area clean. I've seen this cause problems too. If you like to live like a slob, that's on you. But you don't do that when you live with someone else. I usually work out a rotating schedule with my cellie where we take turns cleaning and sweeping the floor, cleaning the toilet and sink, and just wiping everything down daily. That's how it works. Nobody's gonna play anybody's keeper in prison. If you're on the top bunk, you gotta keep that area clean up there. If I'm sitting on my bunk and all of a sudden you drop all kinds of crumbs and crispy ass toenails on my head, we're gonna have issues. Bottom line, you learn how to be compatible and you work through it. You learn how to get along. It takes a lot of discipline and patience, but everybody goes through it. So 063 West Chicago wants to know, in them gladiator days, did you fight Chewy from VNF? It's funny that you asked that question because it wasn't until episode 34 that I mentioned that Mariano Chewy Martinez from VNF was one of their big names that was there. No, I didn't personally get into it with Chewy, but I know one of my homeboys who did. Eddie Little Roach Aroche from the city and his cellie Tomahawk from San Jose. Chewy had a cellie, but I don't know who it was. Anyways, by the time this Q&A drops, you already know what metals I got into it with. Wino from La Rana, Weddle Smooth, I forget where he's from, and then Slick from Santana, possibly F-Troop. So Juan Becerro wants to know, what separates an Imero Familiano from a regular soldado? Is it intelligence? I feel like most people can be violent, but not everyone has the same level of intelligence. Like you said, everyone can be violent, so this alone isn't what sets them apart. Intelligence or seasoning is also just another piece of it. This is definitely a significant part of it, but there's still a lot more involved. What really sets apart a Familiano or an Imero from that of a Soldado is the fact that a Familiano or an Imero are bound by commitments to these organizations. A commitment for life. These guys have taken an oath agreeing to spend the duration of their lives functioning within this organization. A soldado is someone who's willing to assist, someone who's willing to participate, but he isn't bound by any commitment. So Mike H, you ain't gonna get me, Mike, wants to know, is a suicide attempt a means for a removal? Yes, anytime someone attempts to take his own life, it's always considered an act of weakness. I've actually seen this happen before. Luis Looney Rodriguez from SJG, San Jose Grande, was hit and almost killed for attempting to commit suicide in prison. This was only one of the many that I've personally seen take place. The cold reality about this is that these criminal organizations don't care about your personal struggles or the personal hardships that some of us sometimes go through. That's just the truth. Things that might drive someone to consider something like this, such as a dying wife, a dying child, the loss of a loved one, or the reality of getting sentenced to life in prison, are things that nobody cares about. These types of things fall on deaf ears, and these organizations are unforgiving. If you experience these types of hardships, don't expect any sympathy or compassion from your so-called brothers in crime. Within that lifestyle, you're not supposed to show any feelings. You're not supposed to show pain, hurt, or that you're in any way vulnerable. If you do, it's interpreted as a weakness. So Fernie wants to know, regiments made money for the top dogs. When you were at your highest point in Pelican Bay, did you ever receive any money? Were you able to take care of your family for being in the position you were in? Fernie, I'm going to keep it real with you, and I have no reason to lie about this. As much money as I contributed and generated for the organization, I never got a penny sent back to me, nor was I ever a recipient of the money that was made from the street operations. All the promises that are made with regards to taking care of our families and ensuring that they're assisted is a big farce. Nobody's ever taken care of. Nobody's ever sent any money. Not only that, but there's so much scandalous shit going on that you end up becoming wary and hesitant about sending anybody to your family spot, because then you have to worry about someone trying to get at your girl. It happens all the time. Someone who you thought you could trust, or someone who's supposed to be your brother, goes over to your house for the purpose of assisting your family, but instead, they end up trying to dirty Mac on your girl. There's no more honor or trust. Money is even allocated for attorney fees and bail money when you're a functioning member of a regiment. But this is never actually done, and if there's a slight chance that you're ever fortunate enough to be looked out for like this, you can best believe that you're going to be expected to pay it back. every cent. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. When you're out there and you're contributing and generating money, you're embraced and you're held in high regard. But the minute you get busted, you become a liability. Just another hungry mouth to feed. Trust me, if you think that your family's financial situation is somehow going to be at the top of anyone's list of priorities, you're only fooling yourself. I'll be honest, the only money that I ever received was money from somebody that paroled and had to take 2 names with them and send $50 back to those 2 individuals. That's something that's done, but the money that's generated for the regiments, that money's held at the top. There is no trickle down effect. It's a trickle up effect, and that's where it stays. So Check wants to know, how can we get in direct contact? I got some ideas, questions about some content that some people could possibly find interesting. You can get at me through my Instagram, BoxerParadigm66187, or if you don't have an IG, you can reach out to me through my email, juniormendez644@yahoo.com. So Gilbert Marquez says, I respect your style. If you ever do a profile on Florence, I can give you the get down from the 80s to the 2000s. Real talk. Absolutely, brother. I'm always open to doing profiles on different neighborhoods or different barrios, especially when I can get someone who is from that area and who's willing to assist me with the details that are authentic. Get at me as soon as you get a chance so we can discuss this further. Either hit me up through my IG, my email, or just drop a comment in the community section on the channel. Okay, you guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this Q&A. I know it took me a lot longer than it normally does to get this out, but just trust me, it's been a long 3 weeks. If you guys have more questions, go ahead and continue submitting them, as I'm going to start doing Q&As on a regular basis again. Also, we're getting close to hitting a milestone by hitting 30,000 subs. I'm not sure what we're going to do to celebrate this achievement, but we're going to plan something. On a final note, I've also got some profiles that I've been working on for a while now that I know you guys are going to like. I'm doing a full breakdown on the 14 bonds, and then I'm also doing another breakdown on the category system and the leadership structure. I've been working on them for a minute, and I intended on getting them out to you guys a lot sooner, but just trust me, it'll be worth the wait. Anyways, with that said, I'm going to close this up, but as always, PMN wants to thank all of you who have continued to support us, who have helped us grow, and who have continued to believe in us. Our viewers mean everything to us. We appreciate you all, because without you, we would cease to exist.